Hey CD11, we are coming to you live from City Hall with your weekly budget update, and this is one that I am really excited to bring to you. I get the privilege of sitting down with LAFD Fire Chief Kristin Crowley. Chief Crowley has been with the department for about 25 years now, and I know you've held just about every job there is to hold in the fire department. So thank you for making the time to be with us this afternoon.
Oh my gosh, well thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here with you and to represent our LAFD members that do amazing work every single day.
Well, we are incredibly lucky to have you at the helm of this incredible organization, and I know how important the fire department is to my constituents on the west side of Los Angeles. And you know, your firefighters and paramedics are out there on the ground every single day responding to crises and emergencies. And I think sometimes people think of, you know, fires and medical emergencies, but the fire department really responds to a lot more than that, right?
Absolutely. And interesting enough, and you said, well, most people think, oh, it's a fire department. We go to fires. Yes, and our emergency medical services. And in fact, the LAFD is busier than we've ever been in our 138-year history. We actually ran over 500,000 calls in 2023. On average, we run about 1,500 calls a day, and that's everything from fires to rubbish to medical calls and all of it, but also we transport over 650 patients a day to local emergency rooms.
Wow. Well, I remember in Public Safety Committee just maybe a couple of months back, one of the things that we learned was that last year, Los Angeles had more calls for service to the fire department than any other major metropolitan area in the country. And I know for a lot of years, the department has been asked to do more with less. So Chief, how do you lead us through that constant ask on the department?
Right, that's such a fantastic question. And it is due to the true dedication of our people. And I tell you, we are doing more with less. And I just saw this interesting statistic. And since 2010, we've actually run 55% more calls with less people. So how do we do that? Well, we motivate our people, we support them, we advocate to try to get the best tools, equipment, training for our people, but that's where, you know, it's budget time. So where are we going to take this? And that's, you know, where it's a really important conversation with city leadership to advocate for what we need in regard to our resources and staffing.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that, you know, I see that level of professionalism and dedication and excellence out in the field every day, and I want to reiterate how grateful we are. But you bring up a good point, Chief. We are headed into what we know is going to be a contracted and very difficult budget season for the entire city. So what are your top priorities to ensure that the department has what it needs to support the very diverse needs of our city?
Right, so number one is always staffing. And oftentimes people, it's budget time, we need more, we need more. Well, the good news is we actually have real validated information to show that we are understaffed and under-resourced. So we're being very purposeful in regard to what we're asking for. We're advocating for more positions and being very strategic in where we can place those additional resources to maximize our ability to provide service to the entire city.
Well, I know this is going to be a challenge as we move through that process, but I think you know that you have my commitment to help with it, and certainly the support of residents in CD11. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is just sort of the impacts on the department following a wet, rainy season like we've just had. A lot of constituents in the West Side are aware of flooding and other issues that we've had in some of our local fire stations. And I know that generally investments in maintenance and repairs is not something that we've been prioritizing as a city. So what are our plans going forward to ensure that our fire stations are actually safe and habitable for the men and women who are working so hard to keep our city safe?
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up. So first, I want to make sure that we just talk a little bit about the rainy season and what that actually brought, especially within your district. The tremendous amount of rain. And again, going back to the work ethic and the professionalism of our people. So we have our fire engines, our fire trucks, our ambulances. But what a lot of people don't know is we have a swift water capacity. We have swift water teams. And we have that ability to up staff when we know the rain is coming. And I can't tell you, I actually lost count of how many rescues we did in regard to swiftwater rescues and river rescues and mud and debris flow. It's just, they did a tremendous, tremendous job. We also have our urban search and rescue teams where they're strategically located throughout the city, and we can upstaff that too. And that's a flexibility I think we should be proud of from the city side of what we've been able to grow into. So that offers the flexibility of what we need to do on our staffing side. In regard to the infrastructure, you're spot on. We have old fire stations. We had fire stations that need repair. And it's just always those competing interests throughout the city and where the budget is going to go and how we're going to advocate to find and properly fund the infrastructure support mechanisms for our local fire stations. They're very, very old, and that's just a matter of making sure that we set that money aside for improvements and, you know, eventually new fire stations in different areas too.
Yes, well, we definitely know that we need more fire stations. I don't think we've added very many at all in the last 50 years.
No, we haven't. Actually, we've replaced our fire stations, but we haven't added any fire stations. And like we talked about in the very beginning, it's like, yeah, with that call load and just the workload, that means more people, that means more resources, and then where do we house them and how do we keep the upkeep within the fire stations we have and come up with different ways to fund new fire stations where they're needed.
Right, right. Well, in addition to being, you know, our first responders when it comes to medical emergencies and fire emergencies, your department also just necessarily is on the front lines of homelessness and addiction and mental health and a lot of other issues that we confront. And certainly one thing that is a big issue in CD11 as well as other council districts is the threat of climate change and wildfires. And with staffing constraints being what they are, Chief, are there technology resources or other strategies that we can really lean into on the wildfire prevention and mitigation side?
Sure. So I'm so glad you brought that up because that definitely impacts your district. So climate change, wildfires, and all of the other things that we're dealing with across the board of what's actually hit us within the last year in LA. So we're always looking for other ways to leverage technology. We have the resources, we have our helicopters, but what else can we do in regard to, and that's more on the response side. What we need to talk about is preparedness and prevention.
Yes.
I can tell you, your LAFD does an amazing job, just bar none. I don't think there's anybody better in the world when it comes to how we have our capability to respond to an emergency with whatever comes our way. But the preparedness and the prevention piece is really, really important. That's where your constituents can really lean forward and help us. And that's with the brush clearance side. We can leverage technology where it comes to utilizing cameras within a very high fire hazard severity zone. How do we get out in front of it? We actually will pre-deploy multiple resources in areas in your district during high hazard days. So we can bend and flex our staffing model to lean forward. But what else can we do on the preparedness and prevention? And I know that your constituents really do a great job when it comes to the preparedness and prevention, but there's always, always more we can do.
Yeah, well, we've had a couple of great safety fairs where we have focused on the wildfire issues, and I know that my constituents on the west side are always really grateful for those learning opportunities. So that's work that I will look forward to partnering with you. Chief, I just want to thank you again for making the time to be here. And as we head into our budget season, you will see me down on the council floor during those budget hearings. We will be there to support you and make sure that you are going to have the resources and the funding that you need to continue those historic investments that we're making in recruitment and retention and doing everything that we can to protect those positions and your funding for you. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's an honor to serve you and everybody in your district.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, CD11. We will be back next week with another budget update from City Hall.